today. Our guest speaker for today is Dr. Christy Jackson. Christy is the founder of Query, a qualitative research and consulting company, as well as the co-author of Sage Publications' best-selling book, Qualitative Data Analysis with NVivo. Christy has over 25 years of experience in qualitative research design, data collection, analysis, reporting, and stakeholder relations, and is an expert in a diverse array of qualitative methodologies. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you very much. So I'm doing something a little different today than what I usually do. We're here in a database, and I'm going through this methodological journey memo where you see my contact information. I'll put that contact information up again at the end. But what I'm going to do is use this memo in the database as a way to walk you through some ideas. Remember that I also am happy to provide one-on-one assistance. I travel and train. People come and do retreats here in Denver where they work on their own data, and I'm happy to help you any way I can. And I'll make available a longer document than what I'm going through now that has additional instructions and explanations. You can certainly reach out to me for that afterwards, and I'll make sure QSR also has that. Okay, so what I want to make sure I do from the outset, just to get you started, is to realize that there are different tools in NVivo that you can use for different kinds of methodological and analytical tracking. And so I'm going a little off base in terms of, most people just think of things like reflexive journals and that kind of writing as a way to keep track of your journey. And I'm going to cover a few other things as well. We'll start with the nitty-gritty issue of making copies of projects and some tips for making those copies. And then I will talk about memos. I'm actually going to go through 10 different strategies for using memos to keep track of your journey. That will be the bulk of this presentation. And then I'll move to annotations and the project log and project maps. Okay, so the first issue, making copies of your project. Most people think of making backups just in case there's a problem with a database, so they have a copy, or if your computer crashes, but there's a lot of other reasons to make copies. When you're bringing in new waves of data, before you do that, it's a good idea to make a copy. After you're doing big things in the project, like using the autocoder, or maybe when a researcher leaves the team or is added to the team, it's a good time to make a copy. When you're writing reports in between phases of report writing, that can be a good idea. And when switching to a new computer or a new version of NVivo. So there are other reasons besides this, but it's just important that you know it's more than just creating a backup in case your computer crashes. You want backups at different stages of your research so you can go back to those copies and be reminded of where you were at that phase. To make a copy is quite easy. I'll show you here on my screen. You just go to File from the menu at the top of the screen, and there's an option to Copy Project. This is different than Save As, which you'll see in other Microsoft products. When you do a Save As, you end up in the new item. Here, when you copy project, you actually are dropping off a copy and returning to your original database. So here I've created Make a Copy. Here's the name of the project that I'm currently in. I can choose the version that I want to save it to and the location. So if I go to Browse, I have a Project Backups folder already where I have a prior copy. And what I do is put the name of the project and the date that I'm making the backup. So today would be the 13th. The reason I'm doing that is that the copies will stack chronologically so you can get to them really easily. And then I click OK. So I just created a backup copy of this project that I'm on in my database. Okay, so next, I want to talk about these favorite uses of memos. And my first one, which is one of my favorites, is to create your own hyperlinked manual inside an NVivo memo. So to create a memo is quite easy. You just go to your Create ribbon in the top of your screen, and a memo is one of the things you can create. I'll just do a quick test to show you how that works. So I'm just going to call this test memo. And what just opened on the right-hand side of my screen is a brand new empty memo where I can type as much as I want. I'll go ahead and close that now, because I have here a list of other memos that are in the sources area of my database. And one of the memos that I have already is a personalized manual. So let me show you how that starts to look. I'll click to edit so I can edit this further. So I have a few things that are already in here that are hyperlinked, and I want to show you how to do this. The tools that I just showed you of creating a memo, if you forgot that and you want to make sure you can easily get to instructions of how to create a memo, the help is available with this question mark on the top right-hand side of your screen. So if you go to the help, if you're online, it will connect to online help. If you're offline, you'll go to help that's downloaded with the database or with the software on your computer, and then you just type in the thing you want to look for. So, how do I create a memo? Would be a way to hunt for that. And NVivo will prioritize which items might be relevant to you, and you can see the one at the top, create or import memos, is exactly what we want. So when we click on it and go to this help, right now it's illuminated the words that I just looked for. You can uncheck a box, so if those are a distraction, you don't have to look at the terms that were in your search. But once you realize this is the correct help file, and this is basically about a page or a page and a half if you were to print it, all you have to do is go to the URL at the very top of your screen and copy it. So I just copied that URL. I'm now going to minimize the help and go back to my NVivo project. There's a great tool in here for hyperlinks, just like you can hyperlink a Word document. I'll highlight this phrase, right-click. There's an option for links at the bottom of my screen. This is a hyperlink, and I want to create a new one. All I have to do is paste in that URL and click OK, and you can see how I can start creating a triaged version of the help files that are most relevant. So this is a nice little trick that I use in a lot of my trainings, and it helps people focus on the things they really want to focus on for their data. Okay, I'm going to close the personalized manual and go back to this list. The next idea is to create a memo called next 2 hours. And that's to try to help you avoid this questioning that can happen when you step away from the database for a while and want to come back and do work. So to think, I completely forgot what transcript was open last time, what should I do, what if I end up spinning my wheels, how will I ever finish in time, those aren't great questions to have to ask yourself. And if you just create a memo where you start writing the things that you would do if you had 2 more hours of work, then you don't have to pine over these questions. You just follow your own instructions. And of course, you may have other ideas of what to do when you come back to the database, but at least you have a memo where you can go to just follow your very own instructions of what you said you were going to do. All right, the next one is to write up your hypotheses and supporting quotes. So I have a memo already in here called Initial Interpretations, and I'm going to use a tool that's my favorite, which is a See Also link. So let me show you how this will work. I'll open the Initial Interpretations memo, which is right here in my list. And I also will open one of my sources. So in the navigation view, this left-hand column, instead of being in my memos, I'm going to go to my interviews and open up Susan. So now I have Susan on the screen as well as this memo. And the reason I wrote this, I wonder if people who leave and come back have a different sense of connection than people who lived here continuously, is because I know, right, because I know this database, that Susan says, I lived away for 9 years, I was in college and teaching, I really didn't want to come back because I knew when I came back I would never leave again, and I really love new adventures and love going to new places, but I ended up coming back because I married back home and I know this is where I need to be. So here's an example when I really like to use this tool. If I know that I want to connect this quote with that idea I had, all I have to do is copy it. So I'm just doing a right click and copy. Go back to my initial interpretations memo here. And instead of pasting in the quote, because if you paste in the quote, you might later want to get back to that spot in the file, and then you've lost that location. Instead of pasting in the quote, we highlight a piece of what we wrote, and then right-click, and just below paste is paste as a See Also link. So what I just did is I created a link between this pink highlighted area and Susan's file. And let me prove something to you. If I close Susan, so she's no longer open, but I'm in this memo later and I want to see what she said, all I have to do is double click on this line at the bottom of the screen. Susan opens and goes right to that spot. And the best thing about this is if you export this memo, those quotes come along with it as endnotes. So I'm in the Windows version. It would create a Word document with endnotes that are all the quotes. You can create as many links as you want to this one spot, and you can create other links in this same file. All right, so once again, that's a great way to sort of keep track of your hypotheses and some of your interpretations. I'll go ahead and close that memo and close Susan, so we're back in the screen where I have a few things written for you. The next idea is to write about your experiences in the field, and you really want to make sure you know your methodology. Are you doing ethnography? Are you doing phenomenology? Are you doing content analysis? So any way you hear people talk about reflexive journaling, about their role in the field, and how this is affecting the analysis process, that's a great way to create a memo. So anytime you hear about journaling and qualitative research, an NVivo memo will do the same trick. All right, the next one is to track changes in your node descriptions. If some of you are working in a team, when you merge projects, only one set of node descriptions survives in that process, so somebody's descriptions will be ignored. So a great trick is to export your node descriptions and bring them back in as a memo and have people track their changes in that memo. And that way, once there's a merge, everybody can look at the combination of recommendations for those descriptions and decide how they should be changed. Okay, so node descriptions are a great way to keep track in a memo of the things that you've done or the various changes in descriptions over time. Next, and this is also one of my favorites, create a memo for distractions. So it's really easy to have all sorts of ideas that may be very fascinating but aren't the reason that you're doing the research, either because you weren't funded or that wasn't part of your proposal. And you know, if you write a memo about these distractions, I promise that it'll help you put them aside because you sort of write about them and acknowledge them and honor them and then get back to your primary research questions. And there are many times when I've gotten back to these at a later date, and in fact it's been fun to go back to them and see the ideas I had along the way. So consider creating a memo for that. All right, our seventh option, keep a list of questions for your advisor, your supervisor, or your teammates. And once again, you can use See Also links to get to these, and you can resolve them right while you're on the screen, because if you can jump right to the file by tagging that little question with a See Also link, then you can handle it and move on. All right, the next one, you might capture ideas for queries to run later. So here's an example that happens a lot. Let's say you know that the older participants are also predominantly men. And so in addition to running a comparison of males and females, you want to make sure you run a comparison of older females, older males, and younger males, because you're trying to get a sense of whether there's a pattern that you're seeing that has to do with age or gender or both. Well, you can keep a memo designed to keep track of those ideas, because a lot of times you'll want to run these, but you won't know how, and it can be a real distraction to go find out how to do it, when really you could just write it down, make sure you stay with the task at hand, and later come back to this and figure out how to do it. So a memo for those can be very handy. And then developing a methodological narrative about the study. Many people have to write up either a chapter or a section about the choices that occurred during the research that are more design issues, like when people drop out of the study, or ethical issues that might come up. Any major structural shift in the design could be handled in a separate memo. And then the last one, the last memo recommendation, is lessons learned about implementing the research. And these can be large and small. They can be sort of minor administrative things like preparing transcripts and things you want to do differently next time, to more significant things like you may have created too many nodes in your project and you realize that you would have been better off writing more memos and tracking ideas that way instead of just creating a node for everything. So those lessons learned, though they seem very real at the time, sometimes you can forget by the time you get to your next project. So I recommend creating this memo so that you're keeping track of what you want to do next time you're in NVivo. All right, so that's lots of uses of memos, again, beyond what I think people usually think of using them for, and all of these will help you track your methodological journey and think as you're making choices along the way. All right, the next is the role of annotations. And an annotation is like a comment in Microsoft Word. So let me show you one of those. I'm going to go ahead and open up Susan again. And in Susan's file, where she talks about being in college and teaching, right? Remember, she left and then finally got married and came back home. Well, if you know where she was in college and teaching, you can just highlight that passage and then right-click on top of it. There's an option for links, annotation, and then a new annotation. So here I can write, Susan attended Baylor, right? Or wherever she went to school. You might know that even though she doesn't mention it in the transcript because of your other conversations. And so you might want to add that just so that you know that additional data. What's great about this little tool is this link to this comment here, this annotation, will travel wherever you code the data. So if you were to code this paragraph in one of your nodes, then this note, this annotation will go with it. Okay, I'm going to close Susan. And oh, you know what I should mention before I move on? The other thing about annotations is that they're very brief. You can only write 1,024 characters in them. So memos, like the memo that I'm in right now on the screen, can be as long as you want it to be, but annotations are much shorter. So you want to think of them as small little additional facts that you add in context, right where they're meaningful. All right, I'm going to continue on to two more things. The next is the project log. So the project log is not as useful as memos for tracking your journey, but it can be a really helpful problem solver. And it shows you sort of like a flight log of when flights took off and landed. And you can't jump to the location in the database from it, but it can be a helpful way to troubleshoot. So let me show you where that log is. You just go to File from the menu at the top of your screen, and then Project Properties. You'll see there's a checkbox on the left-hand side that lets you turn the log on and off. You can also turn this on when you enter the database or create the database for the first time. Mine is already on, so I'll cancel out of this. And let me show you now how to view the log. It's the same place. I go to File from the menu on the top left, and then I can either clear or open the log that I have. So I'll open it just to give you a sense. You see it has just every single action even that I've done during this demonstration, and it will create a log that will help you troubleshoot. You can also sort by these columns if you're looking for an event that happened with a particular user on your team. So again, it can be helpful, but it's a little bit more of a tracking system than it is a way to look at your journey. All right, and then finally, NVivo Maps. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about these because the help files are so good at walking you through them, but I will just say, oh, and there's my little reminder, it's been 15 minutes. All right, so that message pops up while you're working. So these maps come in a lot of different structures, and they're part of a larger set of things that let you visualize things in the database. To get to those NVivo maps, you just go to Explore from the menu at the top of your screen, and you'll see there's 3 of them. I'm recommending that you start here with these visuals, these maps. First of all, because the mind map is a common tool that people use in other interfaces, and it lets you just sort of map a logical connection between things. The project map will let you put things into it that are already in the database. You can also add other items, and so it shows you more about the work that you've already done rather than the work that you're thinking about doing. And the concept map is a little bit of a combination of both. So the help files, again, will walk you through those and show you those visuals. Some people are much more visual than others. So as you're thinking about tracking your journey, if you know that you like to draw things and make connections, it could be that instead of writing things in memos and using that as your sole source of tracking, you might create some maps that help you track how things have evolved over time. Okay, so that's our quick little run through. And remember that I'm always available for some telephone consultation, one-on-one training, group trainings, or you can come to a retreat here. And you can easily find me if you just look for query.com. And with that, Kevin, I'll see if anybody has any questions that you want me to handle, because I know you handle a lot of them during the session. But you can let me know if there's anything that you'd like me to address.